Welcome to the Standard of Truth podcast. In this podcast, Dr. Garrett Dirkmott and Dr. Richard Leduc explore the early history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the life and teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith. They examine the original historical sources and provide context for events of the past. They approach the history of the church with faith, expertise, and humor.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Standard of Truth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Garrett Dirkmott, and I am joined live in his studio.
Yes.
It's Richard's studio. We're at Richard's house. Studio. Let's call it a studio.
It's well, for tax purposes, this is a studio, Garrett.
If anyone from the IRS is listening, all of Richard's house is a gigantic studio. A giant, giant studio. My host and friend, Dr. Richard Leduc.
Hello, Garrett. Thanks for having me back in my studio.
Technically, I'm having me back.
Yeah, thanks for you're welcome to be back.
Thanks for having me back.
I'm very excited. I had an eye appointment. I get new glasses soon, and I will probably be able to go to a 36 font for the Phoebe Draper Palmer Brown mailbag.
At some point, are the lenses on your glasses going to be able to deflect comets?
Yes.
Like, will they if Armageddon the movie ever happens, will they just use your glasses instead?
I can see back in time, it bends light such.
It's the concave is such that light is it's more than like a black hole.
Yes.
Yeah, it's bending space and time. Yes. I look to the left and it's the 1880s. I look to the right, it's 1920s.
My wife is very concerned. I have very few skills, and if I can't see, I wouldn't do well as new blind, and I would struggle, and I would not be able to make a living for our family. So she's very concerned. She wants me to eat carrots. She sneaks them into every meal we have.
I've pointed this out, but I think it was on the premium. Richard's having some real problems with his eyes, and also refuses and has always refused to eat any form of carrot.
I would rather die. I would rather be blind. Obviously, I would rather. I don't believe it. I don't believe it anyway. It's all one of those things where it's like you put lavender on a knee, an ankle sprain or a knee sprain.
So you think vitamin A is a conspiracy theory?
Yeah, right. The idea of carrots came along before antibiotics.
So you think Big Carrot has the
Big Carrot
has the they've been putting this out for years.
Yeah,
Eat us Jr. and you can see.
RFK Jr. is going to get to the bottom of Big Carrot, but
have you also thought about the fact that carrots are orange? Where's that artificial dye coming from?
From carrots.
Yeah, why would they be orange?
That's funny. Well, Garrett,
they're basically a box of Lucky Charms as far as I'm concerned.
We are very excited for football season to begin. I mentioned on the premium this last week that this is where you lose me for the next 4 months. I've got multiple screens going, none of which are in any way supporting you, as I'm watching football games, and football games upon football games is my favorite thing is college football. And
apparently every once in a while I'll be talking and under his breath he'll say yes or no. And I'll think that he's talking about what I just said.
Yeah, I love what Orson Hyde just said.
Yeah, no, I'll be like, and that's the reason why we all need the atonement. And Richard to the side, no, you can't do that. I'm like, I think we can. I think we all need it.
Well, this episode is going to come out at the beginning of the NFL season.
Yes, I believe the same day almost.
Yes,
exactly right.
Cowboys Eagles tonight. It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So Philadelphia minus 7.5.
It's Philadelphia 7.5. What's your pick on that one? Are you going to take the points?
Well, they just lost Micah Parsons, right? The Cowboys did.
Yeah. So
going to your beloved Green Bay Packers.
I'm not a fan.
No, you're not. You're a Raiders fan. But.
Well, I'm mainly not a fan of the Packers because I was
verbally assaulted.
Yes, there were multiple Packer statements that involved expletives directed at me whenever we tried to share the gospel on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean the Eagles. They looked pretty good at the end of last season. My understanding.
When they destroyed
Kansas
the Kansas City Chiefs like they weren't even a team.
Yeah, that was bad. But no, I think the Eagles come back. They look good. And
like Patrick Mahomes didn't just sound like Kermit the Frog.
They got pass rush.
He actually looked like Kermit the Frog with the hands waving
in the air. They got a pass rush with 4. I mean, that's how you beat Tom. That's how the Giants beat Tom Brady. You get the pass rush with 4. You bring everybody else back, and no one's open.
You catch a ball on your helmet.
That helps. That does help.
It helps to catch a ball on your helmet, and then you're golden.
Yeah. So fly, Eagles fly. I think they're gonna 7.5's a lot, but
it's huge for an NFL.
7.5, yeah, that's quite a bit, especially divisional
they're
rivals.
They're going to win by more than a touchdown, but that's a lot. But also, Micah Parsons is gone.
Yeah, those first round picks they got, they're not going to help them this week.
Well, they did get a defensive lineman.
Oh, very good. He's a top 10
I don't
player
know if
in the
he's
NFL.
Even playing. It was for salary reasons. I don't have any idea. Watch, someone in his family's probably listening.
So now BYU looked good. University of Utah also looked very good.
So you know who looked really good? Tennessee.
Florida State? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't pay the $2 million
NIL.
NIL that they were. Well, I don't know. How was it? It was more than that, wasn't
it?
It was something ridiculous.
We'll get the crack research staff on it.
So they got a different quarterback, who threw for 3 touchdowns, and their quarterback who was demanding all that money went to UCLA, and he wasn't the worst part of UCLA's game.
No.
But he also didn't help them win the game.
Utah looked good. Look, I mean, BYU, I think, had 468 yards rushing, but it's against the vaunted Vikings defense of Portland State.
Yeah.
Who got beat by
It sounds a lot better if you're playing the Minnesota Vikings.
Yes, it does. So it's tough to tell. First week's always tough to tell, right? Like, all right, so, does Portland State run the table the rest of the way?
Well, they lost the week previous to Tarleton State 42-0.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a team that no one, even people at Tarleton right now are like,
if we
wait,
were to
what?
look in your glasses and go back in time and talk to Bannister Tarleton, he wouldn't know that Tarleton State exists. Even though it's not named after him. God, that'd be a weird name your Texas school after a traitorous loyalist who murdered people.
It might be, actually. You never know. Guess which city Tarleton State is in.
Let's go with how about Odessa.
You know what? That's not bad,
Oh,
actually. It's in Stevensville.
Is that near Odessa?
It is relatively. It's on the way from Dallas to Odessa relatively.
Hey.
It's in the the triangle of Waco, Fort Worth, and Stevensville. That's
the power triangle that everyone's always talking about.
So it's about an hour outside of Dallas.
I feel like everything in Texas is at least an hour away, so that's as close as I could have gotten.
Yeah, even if you're in Dallas, going somewhere in Dallas, that's 2 hours.
Every time I go to Phoenix, I'm just like, I've been driving for 2 hours, and I'm still on the same side of Phoenix. What is this?
We just hired a couple of people from North Scottsdale.
But
they will not condescend to leave. Even if they have to go to South Scottsdale, they feel like they've been inconvenienced.
Like, you
how
really put them
dare
out?
you? We had a meeting in Mesa. You would have thought that what I asked them to do
was fly to Louisiana.
Was be a handcart pioneer.
Well, a big shout out to Leslie, who, hearing our conversation about getting a DeLorean up to 88, sent a Playmobil set of the Back to the Future set. So anyway, let's get to the mailbag.
All right,
yes.
So to the mailbag. Good doctors. Just wanted to say thank you for sharing the testimony of Emer Harris. This was in a premium episode that came out about a week and a half ago or so.
If you ever had a reason to get the premium.
This was actually really cool.
Yeah, well, I shared something from Emer Harris, Martin Harris's brother, who gives us some insight into some of the lost portion of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah. While the possible mention of information from the lost 116 pages was pretty cool, this episode was more personally meaningful to me. My brother's middle name is Harris, and I always knew I was connected to Martin Harris somehow. But when I searched my family tree, it turns out that Emer is my 5th great-grandpa.
So you just found out that Emer's his grandpa. That's
about that?
awesome.
Both of my parents and 4 of the 7 kids in my family have left the church in the past 5 years. Jeez. They are frequently on my mind and in my prayers. To hear of my ancestors' faithful life in the midst of familial apostasy and his powerful testimony of the truthfulness of the work was welcome reassurance of my faith in the Savior and his church. Like the members of that stake conference congregation, which is in the Provo Central stake, I believe?
Yes, the Provo Central stake minutes. Yes.
From the 1856 stake conference.
He's saying that because as I introduced that on that episode, I said, Richard, I have a really important source from the Provo Central stake minutes from 1856.
Stake conference.
Richard's eyes lit it over, and he said, oh, really? Super important? And that's not a commentary on his current stake, but more a commentary on the fact that I pulled up the Provo Central stake.
Yeah, shout out to the Provo Central stake, by the way. Yeah. Great
Do you
record
think it still
keeping.
Exists?
Got to. There's got to be like...
There's like 75 stakes probably in Provo now.
Yeah, not even counting the BYU stakes.
Well, if we count the BYU ones, the world itself could not contain the number of stakes
that are in Provo.
Yeah.
Like the members of that stake conference congregation, I too am glad to hear that Brother Harris, Brother Harris had to say. Of the many months, this is the best line in the email, by the way. Of the many months of premium membership fees I've paid, today's episode finally made it worth it.
That's great.
So keep up the great work.
I hate to break it to you.
That comes from Ryan.
Ryan, nothing will ever make it worth it again.
Wait for the Tooele stake minutes from the 1870s.
Hey, when I did the Word of Wisdom, I was pulling out some Tooele talks.
That's true.
Yeah.
This next email comes to us from what I assume is pronounced Danica. Donica?
Are you just going to throw different ways of pronounce? Why are you so worried about how to pronounce it?
Well, she says if we pronounce her name right, that she'll sign up for the premium.
Well, first of all, we know she's not going to. Second of all, she can sign up and cancel within 7 days.
She's going to do a free trial, download everything, and then never...
that's right. Look, it's the way to do it. Either that or you go on a mission.
Go on a mission.
I mean, that's
right.
That's what Elder Hales is doing from the Spanish Fork.
That's right.
Yeah, YSA stake. He's like, well, I want to listen to the premium. I don't have any money, but if I go on a mission, then there we go.
We got one from Elder Stevenson as well. I think we just have people named after apostles.
So we didn't get one from the Elder Stevenson, right? Or is that where I need to go to a
He may have
somewhere?
had the same first name,
okay.
but I'm pretty confident.
Okay.
He didn't use it. It'd be funny if it's Elder Stevenson, but instead of churchofjesuschrist.org,
it's like it's like church. Like there's no R.
Well, no, he goes with the missionary because he's like, well, if they think it's just the apostle, they're not going to give it to me, so I have to use a missionary. So he contacts the missionary department. It's like, hey, I need.
So you think
Gary
Elder
Stevenson,
the apostle, would have to obfuscate pretending that he is a missionary in order to get content from us? That's what you think.
I'm just saying that there's a Gary and there's a Stevenson and then there's a missionary.org. That's all I'm saying.
I sleep very well at night knowing that no one of anything even approaching general authority power listens to us at all.
So you spoke in our ward this last week.
I did.
You did. You came on Sunday and you spoke in our ward, and it was really wonderful. And one of my very good friends, dearest friends, Freddie Ashby and his lovely wife Erin, they sang. He sang a song, one of your favorites,
Beautiful.
I believe.
Yeah. Oh, give me back my prophet dear by John Taylor.
It was stirring.
Beautiful.
It was very it was beautiful. You sent me a text because Elder Tay of the 70s sometimes may attend our ward, and you just before you spoke, you said, "Hey,
it was a couple of seconds before I got up.
He's not here.
He's not here, right? Can I?"
So you can talk about atheists, because the last time you came and you did speak in our ward, you did speak about atheism quite a bit. Was it atheism?
I was quoting an atheist.
When he came to visit Nauvoo. No.
No,
Different
well,
one.
no, I quoted him too. I
Okay.
quoted a socialist.
So many.
I quoted a socialist and I believe it was an anarcho-syndicalist. Yeah, no, just an anarcho-syndicalist. Yeah,
You quoted Monty Python.
yeah, and well, no, I asked if we'd quoted enough atheists, and Bishop Peterson said yes.
Yes, we
We're
have.
right at the limit.
Anyway, so it comes from Danica.
Danica.
It's got to be
It's
Danica.
got to be. If it's not Danica, maybe it's Donica or Danica.
Danica. Let's pronounce
What or
every which way.
Danica.
I think it's Danica.
Danica.
Yeah. Hey, you two. I'm living in Pocatello, which is the Pocatello of Idaho, which, as you know, is nearest to Des Moines. And I have been a listener since the beginning.
Oh,
But also not really, because I just started listening a year ago, but I did start from the very beginning.
well, that's good.
And
It's
she's
good
almost
to start
caught
from
up.
the beginning
Yes.
because
It's a very
you
good
get
place to
see-
start.
It's always whenever you see the aftermath of a wreck, you always wish you could go back and see, well, how did that car end up there?
And my new glasses will be able to show me how.
If you look in Richard's glasses, you can see before time.
But-
The density is it's basically a neutron star that he's wearing on his head now.
I'm very sorry. I just get emotional with Danica's email.
Yeah.
But one of my young women, I was in the presidency when she was a beehive, back when there were still beehives,
Okay.
is getting ready to leave on her mission, Milwaukee,
Oh.
Wisconsin. No joke.
Okay. Wow.
No joke. It's not a joke. That's her Joe Biden impression, apparently. And I told her about your podcast. She tried listening to it earlier, but was driving and didn't want to fall asleep.
Oh wow.
By the way, before I do need to say, so I did take Elder Fawcett and Elder Abel of Layton mission fame to lunch this
Who
last week.
became assistants to the president?
Both of them
because
became
this
APs.
podcast?
And now look, are they the only missionaries in the mission, the Layton mission, that listen to the podcast? Probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Are they now APs? Yes. Am I saying that there's a correlation? No, I'm saying it's causational. I'm saying that there's a direct line.
It's not even a correlation. It's absolutely causational. Because Elder Abel has been going to zone conferences and saying things like, let me tell you what's in the Provo Central Steak minutes that Emer Harris said. And the mission president's like, we gotta elevate this guy.
Right to the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, I took them to lunch to celebrate their promotion, which is a joke that I've said on the podcast before. My grandmother's Jewish. Obviously not a member of the church. I was made a district leader on my mission. She sent me $20 and a letter that said, congratulations on your promotion, which I thought was very funny. I didn't want to correct her because, she sent me money. So anyway.
And you got her baptized since she's passed, right?
Yes, actually we did.
Yeah, there you go.
Parker baptized my daughter Lily for her.
How about that?
And then Rigdon did the confirmation. It was very sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Well, you know what? It was like a pre-tithing she was paying.
That's right. That's funny. But I figure she's about to head out and won't have anything else to do, so the premium missionary content might turn out to be not so bad. That's when you've got nothing else to do.
You got
It's
nothing
okay.
else to do, it's fine.
In all seriousness, your podcast is a godsend. Literally, I saw someone argue that the Book of Mormon was just a copy of the. Well, when you're making the Solomon Spaulding argument, I've got so many better anti-Mormon arguments.
Frankly, all of the
you should be
arguments
embarrassed.
about where the Book of Mormon comes from are just terrible. They're the kind of arguments that a teenager would make when they're trying to convince their parents that they got home on time when they didn't.
They're blaming Solomon Spaulding manuscript.
Frankly, if Kai were to do that, it would be a better argument. The next time, Kai, you don't listen to this, but the next time you get home late, if you say, Dad, I thought it was okay because I read it in the Solomon Spaulding manuscript, I will let you off.
That'll be funny. You'll laugh.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
No, but it's embarrassing. Anyway, so she says the same. So she sees this on Instagram, and instead of freaking her out, it made her laugh, as it should, because the argument is so terrible.
It's so ridiculous.
My parents left the church about 13 years ago, and I'm currently the only active member in my family, despite having been born and raised in the church. My parents left because they found out. They quote, found out more about church history and ultimately decided Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet and Jesus was a really good guy, but not the savior. I can't talk about it too long, or it gets my righteous indignation all riled up, and I want to flip some tables, which probably is why I enjoy Angry Garrett so much. Which is, Garrett, I'm telling you, the people cry out, man.
They want Angry Garrett.
Well, no, because, again...
I'm going to become Zen Garrett.
No, we don't want that Garrett. We want the angry one because again, it allows for people to channel their frustration, or you channel that in a way that articulates their frustration, I guess. For a long time, I just walked by faith. I didn't want to know whatever it was they found out. Not that it stopped them sending me an email about it, which my husband read. He said there wasn't anything there he hadn't heard before. Good for your husband. Anyway, when President Nelson presented the Restoration Proclamation, I listened to it and thought, yeah, duh, we all know that. But then I started to think about how everyone originally received the Family Proclamation basically the same. It is so true. Basically the same. But now it's considered highly controversial. I felt prompted to dig into church history through Fall, which is the podcast we highly recommend you listen to before this by far.
Yeah, speaking of people who came and spoke in your ward.
Oh, Hank Smith.
Hank came and spoke.
Crushed. He did.
And then you guys had me speak right after. Like, you guys are terrible people.
So
everybody after I spoke was like, yeah, that wasn't nearly as good as a Hank.
Well, so first of all, Hank was supposed to come and speak to our ward. Then it leaked out that he was coming, and then it turned into a steak fireside.
I see.
You still just spoke to our ward.
Yeah, right. So only your ward was disappointed?
That's right.
That's good.
That's good. She found the episode, or she found the podcast, and has been binging ever since. The more I learn, the more I want to learn. Listening to Garrett makes me regret getting my BA in English and leaves me wishing I would have gone into a study of church history instead. Well, you made the right choice, Danica.
Look, I mean, I don't know what you're currently doing as a family for money, but I'm pretty sure doing history stuff isn't one of the ways to do it.
Oh, my son Andrew, he's like, he expressed an interest in being an attorney, but wanted to maybe look into history as his bachelor's, and I'm like,
well, it's good. It's good for a law degree.
Sure,
but even then, you just don't want it to be an option.
Have you thought about business? And
I see.
So he's looking into the Marriott School of Business. My understanding, decent school. So I'm very excited about that. I am so excited about it. But history's great, Garrett.
Yeah,
it's very, very good.
Yeah.
Business. I have loved learning more about Joseph Smith and the early saints. I absolutely love the podcast. I laugh, I cry. I count how many times Garrett says some version of the word fornicate.
Do I have like lots of synonyms for it?
Well, so there's a couple people
like
that are
hurlbutt. Yeah, that's the problem.
Which, while talking about the most aptly named hurlbutt, he's a fornicator.
Yeah, he's terrible.
Yes, he is. It's an all-around good time. I'm hoping to be able to go on a church tour someday. No question. That's just lots of gratitude. Keep up the good work. By the way, so Garrett, we have released, and in the description of this, the tour dates for 2027.
Oh yeah,
2026 sold out, and you added a third tour for 2026, but we have 2 tours available for 2027, and we offered it to the premium listeners first.
We just announced it. Yeah,
we announced it first. It was on the website. Anyone could have gone to it.
Yes, but unless you're a crazy stalker.
Yeah, weird to go to just
refresh. Someone's sitting there. I have got to go on a church history trip in 2 years.
So that one has been released. The dates of that have been released, and it is half sold out.
I'm thinking about doing an American history one that goes from like Boston to Sharon, Vermont, and then back down to Philadelphia.
I think it'd be fun,
but I haven't put it up.
No, okay.
No, because
we'll see what the response. Yeah, we'll see what the response.
We'll get inundated with emails. You're like, pass.
She gives the email of the sister missionary that's going out on her mission, and anyway, it was very nice of her to respond. That's awesome. Very, very good. Now, this last email comes to us from Dawson, and then is the discussion point or the jumping off point for the episode, I do believe. Subject, Elder Hyde and World War I. Hello, esteemed doctors. Well, Well, I am a doctor. Esteemed is certainly.
I mean,
Now, Garrett's esteemed.
It's fine. I think we're just fine.
Okay. I would say there was something though that I think that Danica said in the last email. You and I had talked about this before. It's just my personal issue. I think that there is a concern of people with church history. She described the situation. She just didn't want to see or know. Mm-hmm. I hear people talk about putting things on shelves from time to time, and
you're not a fan of the shelf.
I'm not a fan of the shelf because the church history is nothing to be afraid of. It's not. We should be incredibly. We've learned a tremendous amount from our history. There's incredible miracles and sacrifice and things that happen in our history. Mm-hmm. And the idea of putting difficult doctrine on the shelf, well, I suppose is better than apostasy. I think.
I mean, look, if anyone's listening is like, look, if it's not a shelf, I'm out.
It's either a shelf or I'm out. I think that the greater, and maybe I probably need to relax. I need to be more zen. But
you think probably?
I think for sure.
You're telling everyone listening if they use a shelf metaphor.
So my thing is that I think you should gain a testimony of the thing.
Right.
Right. Like that's what I think you should do. I think polygamy is hard. I think there are lots of things that are hard, and I think that we should seek to gain testimonies of these things, because to put things on the shelf is to essentially say, look, I have a testimony of this, but I won't be willing to talk about these things. And I just disagree with that approach.
And it opens up the possibility of someone using that then against you.
Because if it's something that you're putting on the shelf, then you have gaining a testimony of the thing then takes it down. And even as hard of a thing as it might be, anyway, as she talked about that.
At least using proper sources to try to find what explanations exist. And for some things, explanations aren't really going to exist, or they're going to be really bad. I mean, nothing's going to be as bad as the Solomon Spaulding manuscript, but they're not going to be fulfilling. And we do have to walk by faith. And so I can understand why people use the metaphor saying, well, I can't get that all the way figured out yet. But I think what Richard's saying is that for a lot of things, look, you don't need to put, is the Book of Mormon copied from the book The Late War on your shelf?
No.
That's not a shelf item.
No.
That it might come across as a shelf item simply because we haven't heard of it before. And so our immediate reaction is a negative thing. But it's one of those things that you can look into and not just go, that's not a very good argument. You'll actually come away saying, I'm outraged that someone would belittle my faith to the point where they would think that this would affect me.
I think if you put too many things on a shelf, Garrett, what happens to the shelf?
Your wife gets angry at you for cluttering up the shelf, and then when you're gone, goes up and quote unquote cleans your office.
Well, as a historian, just so many books.
There's a lot of things on a lot of shelves.
I was thinking more that the shelf can break if there's too much weight on the shelf.
Well, and look, we don't have answers for everything, but I understand that why the analogies used, saying, well, I don't have an answer for this, but I'm going to just keep on having the faith, and I hope that people do that. At the same time, the best way to gain a testimony of something that is difficult or uncertain is to go to the best sources. Now, notice I didn't say to some excommunicated member's YouTube channel. That's not the best source. Go to the best sources and read and think and pray about it. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to get an answer immediately, but very often when people are struggling with a topic from church history, they haven't gone to the best sources at all, but they have spent all kinds of time wallowing in the mire of antagonistic unacademic sources designed to destroy faith. And when they come up out of the mire, they say, I can't believe it. I don't have a testimony anymore. So you were reading a whole bunch of things designed to destroy your testimony. You weren't reading anything designed by people to help you keep a testimony. And stunningly, you ended up losing a testimony.
I think that's why I liked Danica's email so much, is because it was a fear that she had. And she's like, look, this takes people down, and I want to do something about it. And so she starts, like everyone should, by listening to the Follow Him podcast.
Right.
Reading her scriptures, doing these things, and then eventually stumbles onto ours. But I think that she now has a testimony of these things, or at least is no longer afraid of church history.
Yeah.
And her previous lack of information and knowledge in it is the thing that was fearful, that there was something out there that then would take her away.
Yeah.
And it's the quote that you share from Lyman Johnson. It is one of my favorite quotes of all quotes, right? Of how desperately he wished he could believe.
I could still believe in Mormonism as I once did. I would give my right arm if I could believe in Mormonism as I once did. And he says that, he was happy then when he believed in it.
And he's miserable now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the important things, and we talk about it all the time on the podcast, but is when you are going through a mini faith crisis, when you're trying to build a new shelf with some carpentry tools, it's very important that you stop and think about the things that you know are true from the Holy Spirit and how essential those things are. Things like modern prophets, things like the Book of Mormon, things like the belief that you have a premortal life, things like the idea that families can be together forever, and not in some fake Protestant way where you're like, well, we'll all kind of like be there. We'll all be in the same place. You just won't care about each other because you'll be in the presence of Jesus, so it won't matter. But it's the purpose of this life to become like our Heavenly Father. And so I think it always when you get slapped in the face with some kind of antagonistic argument you haven't heard before, take a step back, realize that it was delivered with ill intent, and realize that there are many, many, many people who have heard all of these terrible arguments and still are certain that the church is true. And hopefully this podcast helps people with that.
Back to Dawson's email. Hello, esteemed doctors. I would say it's great to have football season back, but I'd be lying since I now have to hear you two banter about betting lines.
We did talk about it at the start of the podcast. We're sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was in the email before.
Parenthetically, insert President Hinckley's April 2005 talk on gambling here, and the fact that my Boise State Broncos were a monumental embarrassment in week one. They sure were. Oh my gosh. USF.
You rarely see a score that makes you go double check the score. Like you rarely see one where you're like, wow,
it was like a 3:30 kick. It was like a super early game. And I got to watch like the first quarter and a half where it was, close.
Because Boise State scored a touchdown to start the game.
Right.
And then just never
ever
again.
So bad. And then I had to work, and I came back to this and the blowout.
Yeah.
But you just don't walk into, Tampa.
Yeah.
And
no
come
one's
out
walking into the South Florida Bulls thinking that they've got this.
They have a Grammatica as their kicker, by the way.
Is he like
the son of Martin Grammatica?
No way.
100%. Grammatica was at the game. They found him.
So
look,
Martin,
he's saying how much he hates the podcast during football season because
Martin Grammatica, just stayed in Tampa after he retired.
Well, you don't leave. One doesn't just simply leave Tampa.
There's other.
He's probably Clearwater, but still.
Yeah. And his son didn't leave Tampa either. Just stayed there.
No,
for the university.
he's a fighting bull kicker, and he nailed like a 48-yarder or 52-yarder, something like that. Nailed it.
I remember. Automatica is what we called him.
He did. He celebrated. He had a muted celebration, which they joked about as they were commentating, because I believe Martin was jumping all around and hurt himself.
Yes, remember when he pulled his Achilles or something jumping around. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, so he's not excited for football season because we talk about football.
We don't ever talk about football. I don't know what you're talking about.
But yes, I grew up in Western Idaho, so I love Boise State. I went there for my undergrad, or finished there in my undergrad. I started at the BYU. BYU, I also love their football team, and then obviously Oklahoma State. Go Pokes. So there we go. Yeah, Boise State, that was disappointing. Anyways, I'm a frequent listener of the podcast and have written in a couple of times, having one of my emails read on the show.
Well, we're giving him a double read.
Yes.
Boy, we gotta.
Which I'm very grateful for.
We're gonna have to limit you going forward.
You guys do incredible work and help so many people by providing much needed historical context to church history, as well as addressing concerns and ideas that flood the internet all the time. My question for you guys today is in regards to Joseph Smith's Civil War prophecy. You guys have discussed at length how incredible that prophecy is in the past, but I recently heard something about it that I never heard before, and that is Orson Hyde's commentary on the prophecy in a letter to the editor of the Missouri Republican on January 1st, 1862, where he states, quote, "When the demon of war shall have exhausted his strength and madness upon the American soil by the destruction of all that can court or provoke opposition, excite cupidity, inspire revenge, or feed ambition, he will remove his headquarter to the bank of the Rhine." Of course, in hindsight, we can see that this would be in reference to World War I and World War II, sprouting out of Europe and heavily involving the evils and atrocities committed by the Nazi regime in Germany, which of course sheds more light on the part of Joseph's prophecy that discusses war pouring out on all nations. I would love to hear your thoughts about this, especially since in over 2 decades of membership, this is the first I'm hearing about it, and I've had to scour the internet to even find the quote for myself. So even though I'd love to believe this is legitimate, I just want to be sure that I'm not participating in confirmation bias in doing so. Thanks again for all you do. You guys are awesome, Dawson.
Oh, well, sorry we talked about football, but thank you for the question. So, I guess I don't know how really to approach this except to say, look, we do talk about Doctrine and Covenants Section 87 a lot. In part because...
We just re-released it, by the way. We just re-released it a couple of weeks ago, the full thing, and for people to listen.
Yeah, and part of the reason why it comes up is it's, of course, it's kind of like Jesus prophesying that there would be no stone left on top of another for the temple. It's a pretty stark revelation. I mean, either there's going to be a temple or there's not going to be a temple. And then, of course, in AD 70, the Romans make sure there's no temple.
They do.
And that is not who I named my son after, but General and then Emperor Titus is the one in.
I was in Rome on a work incentive trip. I took the several pictures of the arch there with the menorahs all over.
Yeah, and Titus, the Titus's triumph.
Yeah.
And his father Vespasian was the one who undertook it, and then is this? See, would you rather me talk about Roman emperors, or would you rather me talk about what the line is on the Northwestern State football game?
So yeah, Eagles minus 7.5 tonight.
Interestingly, I mean, so one of the things about prophecy, though, is unless we have a prophet who interprets the prophecy for us, you will always have a lot of people thinking that what's going on is in fact the interpretation. In fact, on our Search These Commandments podcast, the next one we're doing is Doctrine and Covenants section 29. And I told Richard I've got some trepidation doing it just because it's about, at least a healthy portion of it, is about the second coming. And whenever you talk about the second coming of Jesus, this is going to come as a surprise to many of you, but there are a lot of people who have lots of opinions about what means what whenever things are discussed. I mean, frankly, there have been so many people that have been the Antichrist that would bring about the second coming in my lifetime. In my lifetime, there have been like a dozen different people that have been, oh yeah, they're the Antichrist. They're the Antichrist. Because people are trying to make the revelation, or John's revelation, fit into their worldview. Part of the reason why we talk about the Civil War prophecy a lot is, one, it's just so stark. Coming from a 19th century historian, the fact that Joseph is so specific that it's going to be over slavery, that it's going to start in South Carolina, that it's going to terminate in the deaths of many souls, that warfare is going to spread, that slaves are going to be marshaled against their masters. And I think I talk about it a lot because the general lack of knowledge from that time period between 1830 and 1860, when the secession happens, it's so poorly known by your average American. I mean, you probably don't have a lot of people, walking around talking about William Henry Harrison's platform. I mean, you do have people say Tippecanoe and Tyler too.
Oh, still.
You remember that?
Yeah, you can't go anywhere in Delta, Utah, for sure.
Well, I remember Rumsey Dumpsey, Colonel Johnson shot Tecumseh. Yeah,
that's right.
So that also powerful. Just he did not win.
That was, by the way, that was my mom's favorite episode.
Was Rumsey Dumpsey?
She laughed at that. She texted me about it. That was her favorite.
And she hasn't listened since then.
Well, she listens, but she hasn't found one better than that.
I see. There's no other reason to comment. So what happened when we talk about confirmation bias? I mean, because the American Civil War is the biggest deal that's ever happened in American history, it seems inevitable to us. It's kind of the same problem when you talk about the road to World War II. I mean, obviously, in hindsight, you see that Neville Chamberlain making an agreement with Adolf Hitler over, Czechoslovakia, it is not, all it did was fuel Hitler's war ambitions, and it didn't. You can tell that now, but you didn't know what was going to happen.
Because what does good old Neville say when he comes back?
He says, "I have secured peace for our time," and a year and a half later, World War II starts.
But what's time? Like a year and a half?
Yeah. So maybe Neville Chamberlain was like, "I secured peace for our next 74 minutes.
That's fair.
Well, maybe he was wearing your glasses. And it was bending around. And so part of the reason why I talk about it a lot is I find it the least of the arguments that are made against Joseph Smith, because this is such a powerful prophecy. You have people say things all the time, not knowing that what they're saying is ridiculously inaccurate. So they'll say things like, well, everybody knew there was going to be a civil war. Okay, by everybody, you mean nobody. Or, you know what? Let's go find the person in 1835 who is a prominent politician who is adamant saying that there's going to be a civil war, that it's going to be bloody and it's going to be awful. You'll notice that they won't create a very long list of those people, or any list at all. They'll just say something like everyone knew there was going to be a war, but then provide no evidence. And why don't they have to provide evidence? Exactly because of confirmation bias. Because to us, nothing matters more in American history than the Civil War, and the only thing we can think about when we think about the Civil War is the fact that slavery existed. Those two things, the Civil War and slavery, are the most prominent part of 19th century history to most Americans. In fact, it's probably the only thing that most Americans would know at all from the 19th century. If you asked them, name an event that happened in the 1800s. Civil
War.
Yep. What was the Civil War over? Slavery. Those would be the two things they would know. So we tend to view everything leading up to it in terms of it. And that causes people to poo-poo, Joseph Smith's revelation. I mean, you could do the same thing to Jesus, right? Because Jesus said, the Romans are going to come destroy this temple. And, in hindsight, it's very easy to be like, how could anyone in Israel have thought that the Roman temple, the Romans were going to destroy the temple? The temple's massive. The temple's huge. Israel's in an alliance with Rome. So how in the world could this ever possibly be the case? But in hindsight, people look back like, oh yeah, obvious. It's obvious that it was going to be destroyed. In fact, I find it one of the least credible arguments that exists among New Testament scholars when they're trying to date the Gospels, because they don't want to say that the Gospels could be dated any earlier than AD 70. Right. Why? Because all the Gospels say the temple's going to be destroyed. So what's more likely? That Jesus's followers, after the fact, said, oh, by the way, he also said the temple was going to be destroyed. I forgot to write that down. Or that Jesus predicted perfectly exactly the destruction of the temple. And so, sure, it might be more likely, but just like our bad football picks, occasionally they'll be right. And so likelihood is not the same thing as proof. And oftentimes, especially when you're dealing with ancient history, that's what people do. When you're dealing with American history, the Civil War is such a mammoth, gigantic aspect of our history that we interpret the past based upon how massive it was to us, thinking that everyone leading up to it must have known just how terrible it was going to be. Let me share something with you from a Charleston newspaper. So Charleston, South Carolina, yes, where the Civil War begins. It begins, someday on Condemned to Repeat It, we'll talk about the American Civil War.
That's hilarious. We will not.
We're almost to the Federalist Papers. Right?
Yeah, I will. By the time we talk about the Civil War, I will be using some sort of a braille device in order.
You won't be able to see it all.
Not at all.
It's a good thing that we're an audio medium. You don't need to see anything.
It's true. It's true. And honestly, if my vision gets worse, will I be able to read more poorly? Not possible.
Well, didn't we already have AI read some letters for you?
It did a great job.
So why don't we do that again?
You know what? We should.
Okay.
Yes.
But let's do AI in the voice of like Hulk Hogan.
You know what? Out of respect and memorial of him.
Or maybe it doesn't have to be. Let's just do Sylvester Stallone reading our letters.
Maybe we should do maybe we should do people from history and have it say, hey, this is...
Like Winston Churchill reading our letters.
I want somebody where we don't have any voice from them.
I see. We're just making it up. Genghis Khan reading our letters.
Well, I was thinking a U.S. president, but Genghis Khan.
Okay,
you know what? All right, I'm on it. Okay.
I want Genghis Khan. I want Skanderbeg, the Albanian general. And I also want...
what year is that?
1600s? I don't know.
Oh, okay, very good.
14,
yes, I should. My Albanian history only goes to about the 1700s.
Yeah, it's tough. How about give me Charlemagne?
Oh, first of all, that'd be good. Get some French up in here.
Yeah.
You know what?
For you.
It'd be funny. Charlemagne would have like a super obnoxious French accent.
Just ridiculous French accent. Yeah.
Let's do Charlemagne.
Okay. So we're gonna have Charlemagne read some of our letters. So to give you just a brief overview of the start of the Civil War. Back in the day, presidents didn't take office until March, and so the lame duck period was gigantic. People get frustrated with the lame duck period for American presidents now, but it's just November to January. It used to be November to March. So it used to be essentially 5 months, 4.5 months of lame duck period. And during that time period, so after Lincoln's elected, South Carolina votes to secede, and then all of the deep South states, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Texas, Louisiana, they all vote to secede. They start taking over federal arsenals. They start taking over federal forts. And James Buchanan does what James Buchanan does best.
Nothing?
Nothing. Yeah, if you had a scorecard on things that James Buchanan does well, it would be an empty scorecard. And so by the time Lincoln actually takes office, these states have formed their own confederacy for months. They've been training soldiers for months. Meanwhile, Buchanan's done nothing. But people still don't really know whether or not it's actually going to become a war. Just like I've used the analogy before, if tomorrow California declared its independence from the United States, like the California legislature said, you know what, we're independent, most Americans would not actually think that B-2 bombers would be hitting LA. Okay, they would think, okay, I get it, a little bit of a temper tantrum going on, they're going to resolve this and things are going to be fine, right? So while people have consternation, they don't actually know what's going on. Well, one of the forts that's still controlled by the federal government is Fort Sumter in Charleston Harbor. And the South Carolinians are demanding that the federal troops leave because Fort Sumter is their sovereign territory. And it's going to become this flashpoint because there's federal troops there. What do? South Carolina's made it very clear that if you try to reinforce them, then we'll consider that an act of war, and all you can do is come get them. And so Lincoln is faced with that when he first starts. But this is from March 12th. March 12th of 1861, okay? The firing on Fort Sumter is basically a month after this. So the war starts a month after this South Carolina newspaper says this. The intelligence contained in our telegraphic column today will gratify our readers. Fort Sumter is to be ours without a fight. All will be rejoiced that the blood of our people won't be shed in our harbor in either small or a great degree. To those who have troubled themselves with the vague fears of war on a large scale and the horrors of war extensively, this relief will be as great as their apprehension had been grievous. So essentially, you were stupid to think that there was ever going to be any great conflict anyway. But for those few people that, had put up in their minds, oh no, it's going to be a terrible war, this should settle you all down. This is 1 month before the firing on Fort Sumter and the beginning of the Civil War. For ourselves, notwithstanding all the northern thunder, we have never been able to bring ourselves to seriously believe in the probability of any more than a few collisions, sufficient to show that we are in earnest and competent to make good our position of independence against our would-be masters. This is a pretty common view. You also have many newspapers in the border states where, have a lot of southern leanings, they're slave states, that are saying things like, well, how could the North ever possibly conquer the South? I mean, even if there was a war, the North would realize within the first 6 months that there's no possible way to conquer the South, and that'd be the end of the war. To give you an idea, Virginia, because they're very worried, they haven't yet seceded. They secede after Lincoln calls for troops to go after the firing in Fort Sumter. Virginia decides that they need to beef up their military. And it's quite scandalous, in fact, because they make a call for the Virginia state militia to be raised to a guard force, to be raised to 10 to 20,000 men. And people are like, oh my goodness. I mean, remember the standing army of the United States at this time is 8,000 men. So Virginia is calling for a military that is more than twice the size of the federal government's military. Okay? That number, 15,000, 20,000, wherever you want to put it, is 10%. 10% of the number of Virginians who actually fight in the Civil War for the South.
Wow.
And that's not counting the Virginians that fight for the North, because West Virginia breaks off from Virginia during the war. So there's actually thousands of Virginians that fight for the North. But over 160,000 Virginians will ultimately fight for the South. But people thought it was scandalous that Virginia is calling for a 10 to 20,000 man enlistment. So it's easy in hindsight to look back and be like, oh yeah, everybody knew. I mean, the fact that Joseph said it would be in South Carolina. How did Joseph know that one of the only forts that was not evacuated by the federal government just so happened to be the fort in Charleston Harbor in South Carolina? Because there are lots of harbor forts that were just simply abandoned by the Federals or taken over without any conflict by these southern states. Not just lucky Joseph, he just keeps guessing right. Now, detractors will say things like, well, yeah, but I mean, everyone knew it'd be South Carolina because they had just tried to nullify the tariff bill. And so then they'll talk out of both sides of their mouth. They'll say, well, of course he picked South Carolina because South Carolina had just tried to nullify the tariffs, and Andrew Jackson was threatening to march an army down to force them to comply with federal law. Well, okay, so let's take your argument. Joseph's just reading the newspaper. He sees that South Carolina has nullified federal law, and so he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to have a revelation that says they do it again, only this time it actually causes an actual civil war. But if he was just reading the paper, wouldn't he just say South Carolina is going to again try to nullify federal tax laws? Because that's literally what had happened. Why would he say it would be over slavery? Especially in 1832, when the arguments over slavery are as muted as they have ever been in the last 20 years, basically. Especially during Andrew Jackson's presidency. Because Andrew Jackson had a postmaster, which we've talked about before on other... have we talked about him, or do I just hate him personally?
I think both. I think you both hate him, and we've talked about him.
I feel like I talk about people that I hate a lot.
I
mean, present company accepted. Yeah. I mean, but yes. But Andrew Jackson had a postmaster who refused to even deliver abolitionist mail to post offices in the South.
I feel like we have talked about him.
Yeah. Oh, it's Amos Kendall.
I feel like we have.
Yeah. So we talked about him because he also tries to defraud the Mormons later. So a little bit of repression of the males, a little bit of repression of the right to petition for slavery to end, and also a little bit of repression of Mormons. There's a lot. I feel like there's a lot going on. You have to have your finger in a lot of pies in the 19th century. Sure, you're going to be defrauding people. That's part of it. It's part of it. As Dr. McInerney would say. So I know I've given a lot of a prelude here, and I haven't quite answered the question. Welcome to the podcast. I don't have time to answer it all this episode.
Oh, that's hilarious.
So this is like the working up to. Well, we spent a lot of time talking about Danica's
the shelves
as well. Yeah. So let me share one more article before we get to the article in question. So the best thing to do is someone asks me a question. I don't respond to it. I respond to a different question. This is called the Standard of Truth podcast. And so if we're going to do a part 2 on this, well then let's be geared up for it when we do it. Just one more example of people not, I mean, look, there's some trepidation. That's what the South Carolina newspaper is referring to, as it makes fun of people for thinking that the war is going to be bloody. You have another commentary, this time in a Missouri newspaper, again, a border state. It's a slave state, but has a very strong Union sentiment in the St. Louis area and a very, very strong secession sentiment in the western portions of the state, in the Jackson County, we like to kill Mormons area. I don't know if it's called that. Is it called that? Is that? It was unofficial.
I think that's their motto, but I don't know.
I see.
Okay.
Yeah. Jackson County, don't let the sun go down on you, Mormons. That's their motto. So here this newspaper is talking about how terrible it might be, but it goes on to say this wretched catastrophe. This is January 1st of 1861. So states have already seceded. South Carolina has already seceded. These other states are already putting in their conventions to secede. This wretched catastrophe may be averted. The secession of South Carolina, or even all of the Gulf states, will make not the secession of South Carolina, or even all of the Gulf states, would make civil war inevitable. War is not the necessary consequence of the secession, in view of the probability that no considerable part of our people are so wrong-headed as to be capable of neither making nor listening to reasonable terms of accommodation. If our people are as enlightened as they've always claimed to be, it is not too much to hope for an adjustment that will restore the integrity of the Union and ensure its stability for many years.
So wait, now this is 1860?
This is 1861. This is after states have already seceded, but before the first shots have been fired.
So not in the late 30s.
So it's not in 1832, stunningly.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting how that works.
Okay. So 30 years later, and they're still saying, look, war's not inevitable here.
And the funny part about that is, even when South Carolina did nullify the laws in 1832, they tried to get the other southern states to side with them. And as soon as Andrew Jackson said, I'm going to be getting an army, they're like, we're out. We had nothing to do with this. They were like that friend who keeps like pushing the big guy who's mad at you. Like, yeah, no, you should take him out, Richard. You should take him out. And then the guy starts to swing and that guy's gone. Like he's nowhere to be found. Yeah. That's what Mississippi did to South Carolina. Mississippi's like, yeah, this tariff is wrong. I think South Carolina is right. You're sending an army? Yeah, like I've always respected the federal government, and we think that we want to pay more tariffs, actually. We want to pay more in tariffs than we're paying before as the army's marching down to South Carolina. So if you're an American who went through the nullification crisis or knows about it in your history, you may not be 30 years old at this point. The last time this happened, there was a lot of, oh no, will this be a rebellion? Will this cause a war? What will happen? And Andrew Jackson marshaled the army, started to march down to South Carolina, and didn't even come close to getting there before South Carolina said, oh, we were just funning. Yeah.
We were funning you?
We were funning y'all. It wasn't, don't worry, no nullification here. And they tried to get other states to join them, and they didn't. So when Joseph Smith says that other states are going to join South Carolina, that's not what recent events said. In fact, American history is demonstrative of the opposite. In the War of 1812, the great Senator Douglas, Stephen Douglas, who at one point was a Latter-day Saint ally and then pushed the army going to Utah, because it's hard to believe a politician would change their opinion based upon getting votes. But Stephen Douglas was one of these rare politicians who was willing to change his position on the basis of getting votes.
I don't believe it.
It's crazy.
Don't believe it.
We don't see it anymore now, but then, Stephen Douglas would just change his votes. And, but even he pointed out, after the secession is going on, he said, the first time anyone even talked about secession was at the Hartford Convention during the War of 1812. So during the War of 1812, the roles were completely reversed. The South wanted war against Great Britain, and the South, they stood to gain a lot from it because Britain had been funding and supplying Native American tribes in the Southeast. And the northern states were the ones that were hit the hardest. I mean, if you live in Connecticut, nearly all of the economy in Connecticut and Massachusetts and New Hampshire back then is in some way related to shipping and trade. Well, when you go to war with the country that has the largest navy on earth, that's not going to be very helpful for those industries. And so these New England states were so opposed to the war, even after it was voted, this is an official war, Congress voted on it, that in 1814 they actually got together in Hartford and they had a convention to discuss how do we resist being a part of this war? How do we resist James Madison's administration? And one of the proposals that was put up at the Hartford Convention was, why don't we New England states just secede and become our own country? Now, it was put up at the convention. It was voted down at the convention, pretty decisively so. But unfortunately, for the members of the Hartford Convention, almost immediately after the news broke about their vote to think about seceding from the Union, the news arrived that Andrew Jackson had just routed the British at the Battle of New Orleans. And then the news arrived a week after that the British had signed a peace treaty. So talk about your all-time backfires, right? Here you have all of these northern politicians on record talking about becoming traitors to their country weeks before the very war they were protesting ended in victory for the Americans.
Yikes.
It's an all-time backfire. It's like telling Tulane they can't wear their Hurricane Katrina uniforms.
Yeah, you're going to lose by 20.
You're going to have to look that up. Jake Retzloff. If you're just guessing based on history, what would you guess? Would you guess that there would be a war where people would actually start killing each other? Or would you guess that, like the two other times someone tried to put together a confederacy of states, that it would fall apart because Americans have more nationalism than they do this fealty to some state? So the arguments to me have always been incredibly hollow. They take 21st century Americans' views on the coming of the American Civil War and paste them unnaturally onto the past, and then blithely say to a believing Latter-day Saint, "Oh, I can't believe you believe that. I mean, that's not even a very good prediction." We've made fun of it before, where people say things like, and it's said that slaves would rise up against their masters, and they didn't even do it. You do realize that literally hundreds of thousands of slaves were put into the Union Army. That's not the same thing as rising up.
But only hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, only hundreds. Only 20 times the amount of the entire federal army at the time Joseph Smith said it. Only 20 times the amount of the entire U.S. Army. Only that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only that.
Well, so that's why I put this revelation on a shelf, Garrett.
This is on your shelf.
Yeah, it is.
Because you're like, there's no way this could be possibly true. I mean, arguments about this revelation are so terrible. I actually confronted an anti-Mormon the other day on the internet. I don't want you to think that I'm just on the internet attacking anti-Mormons.
People want to believe it.
Occasionally I'm on the internet attacking anti-Mormons. Obviously under an assumed name.
It's an egg?
Well,
like an egg is attacking them?
It's Tirig Tamcrid. It's my name backwards. I'm like Rumpelstiltskin. You're going to get me to say my name backwards. But this person was arguing. This was part of their argument. And they were a Christian anti-Mormon. So they were a Christian saying Joseph Smith's a false prophet, even though Mormons say that he's a true prophet. Sure, they point to this, but that revelation wasn't put into their Doctrine and Covenants until 1877 or 1876. So that just shows that it was made up after the fact. Now, I understand why they might make that argument. I also understand how ridiculously idiotic the argument is, because we have literally dozens of manuscript copies of that revelation in all kinds of people's handwriting all throughout the 1830s and 1840s. And I said that to this person who responded, well, how do I know that those weren't forged later? And so I sent him the original publication of the Pearl of Great Price in England, which includes Doctrine and Covenants section 87 in it, published in 1851. Clearly, years after the Civil War. What's interesting is that they were shown to be so ridiculously wrong, and they didn't even admit how wrong they were. Their response after I sent that to them, and there's no way you can get away from it, it's got the publication date on there, it's the original. They said, well, it doesn't really matter because anyone still could have said it. Well, if it didn't really matter, why were you making the argument? It's very odd. I'm making this argument to prove my point right up until my point is proven to be erroneous. Then it doesn't matter at all. Well, then why are you talking about it? If it doesn't matter, don't let it not matter. You're saying it matters anyway. So in our next episode, I'm going to finally read Orson Hyde's letter, but I'm also going to provide some context surrounding it so that you can get an understanding of how Latter-day Saints are feeling with the coming of the American Civil War. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Standard of Truth podcast, hosted by historian Dr. Gerrit Dirkmaat and Dr. Richard Leduc. If you know of anybody that could benefit from the material in this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.